And welcome to the Planet X podcast number 4. We've got a lot to talk about this week. A lot of emotion in the past few days. So I'm Chris,
and I'm Mike, and I don't know how I feel.
I don't know quite how I feel. Well, I do now, but at about 10:30 Friday night, I wasn't quite sure. Force Awakens came out, and it was.
Before we talk, we got to warn people.
Oh yeah,
we're going to talk about Star Wars this episode. We're going to talk about Star Wars this episode. I know last episode we talked about nothing but Star Wars because we were psyched up. We're going to throw a couple other things in it. Maybe let's begin with a little talk of Star Wars. Then we'll do a spoiler-free little Star Wars conversation at the beginning. We got a couple other things we want to talk about, and then we'll get into Star Wars. So if anybody hasn't seen it and they want to give up on this episode of our podcast before we ruin anything for them, they got an out.
That works. And if by the time this podcast is published, if you haven't seen The Force Awakens yet, what the hell are you waiting for?
Stop whatever you're doing and run to a movie theater.
Yeah, just quit your job, leave the family at home.
Abandon your children.
I know Christmas is on Friday. Don't spend it with the family. Go sit in the movie theater. Watch Star Wars. I might. But as expected, it opened huge. It broke all sorts of records. It broke the record for early screenings. It took in $57 million on Thursday, breaking one of the Harry Potter movies early screening records. Took in $119 million on its first day. Broke the record for largest total in its first 3 days at about $248 million. It toppled Jurassic World by quite a bit, actually. And that record was taken by Jurassic World this past summer. And it pretty much stomped Jurassic World. It's taken in $281 million internationally. It's taken in $525 million globally. And that's in a weekend, basically.
Just to look at it right now, it is less than $10 million behind Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2, and that's been out for 5 weeks.
Yeah.
I did see I saw a statistic that said Star Wars The Force Awakens made more money in one night than the Fantastic Four made in 11 weeks.
Yeah. And not to kind of change the subject, but you bring up the Fantastic Four, which is now out on DVD. And I was out doing some last minute Christmas shopping today, and there are going to be a lot of people that must have been bad this year that are getting that hunk of shit for Christmas. Because like everywhere I went, there were like a copy or two on the shelf. And I know those people didn't see it in the movie theater. Nobody did.
Well, sometimes when a movie's that bad, people get curious about it. And then there are people that are completists and they're like, I need every comic book movie that ever comes out.
Oh,
I need every. If you're a Marvel guy, you're like, I need all the Marvel movies.
Yeah. But
yeah. Speaking of going into the Marvel thing real quick. And this is something that just came to mind. I've been watching Jessica Jones on Netflix. I'm only like 2 episodes in.
Yeah, I'm about 4 in. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying it. But I did notice a few slight Fantastic Four references in episode 2 in a convoluted around the back way. When she's on the subway, one of the stops they announce is Yancey Street.
Yeah.
Which
is where favorite watering holes at.
And it's not a purely Fantastic Four thing. And then the dialysis machine was made by the Baxter Corporation.
Yeah.
So just a couple little slight kind of nods that you're like, we didn't mean that, Baxter Corporation. And, but it was kind of fun to see that a little attempt. Like they kind of knew that Fantastic Four movie was going to suck eggs and it was going to come back to Marvel and they could just start incorporating some of those things in.
One can hope.
Yes. Now, I will, with looking at some of the other box office results, I'm kind of proud of Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Road Chip, pulling in $14 million.
Wow, really?
14 million, and Sisters did 13 million on its opening weekend. So you had, you had 3 movies that were in their first week top the box office that week. But it does kind of read of, there were families and the dad was like, all right, I'm going to see Star Wars to make sure it's okay for the kids.
Because it did have a PG-13 rating.
Yeah. Can you take the kids to see the Chipmunk movie? So I'm sure some of that happened. A decent amount of that happened. And then there was other ones like, I don't want to see that Star Wars movie with you. And I'm like, okay, why don't you go see Sisters and I'll see Star Wars and then we'll go get dinner after.
Yeah.
Or like, married couples or like the dudes went and saw, maybe I'm being a little sexist there because my wife loves Star Wars. So she wouldn't.
Yeah.
If you want to go with the stereotypical nerd, like the Big Bang Theory nerd, none of their girlfriends like Star Wars.
And they're wrong.
Yeah. It was, it's an important thing in some people's lives. But I was interested to see what the rest of the box office. And they were talking about that Alvin and the Chipmunks movie. I was going to get slaughtered, but I'm like, for a movie like that, $14 million, good for them.
That's not bad.
And I haven't seen any of those movies, but that was a franchise I always liked as a kid, and I think it's a good franchise for kids because it introduces you to music in a roundabout kind of way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it works, so good for them. And comedies, always, there's always a comedy that does well when there's the big action movie coming out. There's a comedy that does okay. So I'm glad the box office was, I guess, well-rounded for those movies in their first week.
See, Quentin Tarantino, your movie could have done all right.
That's another issue. And Quentin Tarantino was belly aching about getting bumped out of, Disney bumping him out of theaters, which I didn't read the articles, but I'm like, I don't know if that's Disney's decision or it's a promotional decision. Star Wars is going to be a moneymaker, and they know that they got to get that on screens, and a 3.5 hour long rated R movie takes up a lot of time. And it's almost
not only that, you knew this movie was coming out.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Why even attempt to go head to head with it?
Yeah. Well, did it even come? I didn't think it was coming out until Christmas.
It got. I think it was supposed to come out this weekend, and then I think his thing, and I could be wrong, it got pushed out a couple weeks because now it's coming out on New Year's, I think.
Okay. Which I think is, to me, it seemed like, all right, I'm planning my wedding, and everybody told me it's going to rain that day, but I'm going to do it anyway, and then be mad at the weatherman.
Yeah.
I'm psyched to see Hateful Eight as I am to see anything else. I
want to see it, but it was like, I was just kind of like, dude, you knew this movie was going to be like one of the biggest movies ever.
I'm considering going into Manhattan to see Hateful Eight in the 70 millimeter showing of it. That's like an extra 6 minutes long or something.
Oh, interesting.
He's done these. There's a special cut, and it's getting a old school type of movie viewing with an intermission, and he's got a great cast in it, and it looks real interesting. And there's not a Tarantino movie I don't like. And it seems like it's one of those things that, a month or two ago, there was all that boycott talk of the Tarantino movie, and people are just like, it's a good movie. I got to go see it. Because there were some people that were upset because he was involved in one of the anti-police brutality protests. So cops started threatening him, which kind of defeats the purpose of trying to say there's no such thing as police brutality when you threaten a man for talking. But, that's a different issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, speaking about movies, one of the articles that I read was about this new Hasbro Paramount cinematic universe that they're talking about.
Which I can kind of get behind.
Yeah, to me it kind of makes sense because a lot of those things work in a way together. Transformers and G.I. Joe are part of it. And they've had several crossovers through the years. That there were in the 80s, there was a Transformer G.I. Joe comic. In the cartoons, there were slight references to there was a crossover Transformers episode where G.I. Joe characters showed up.
Yeah, yeah.
They one of the other the Mask toy line has been included in talks about this this crossover, and that they put out a Matt Tracker Mask figure in the G.I. Joe 25th anniversary line a few years ago. Cool. And then they're also talking about Micronauts, Rom the Space Knight, and Visionaries being included in it.
Which are all kind of, are all kind of cool properties.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all things that were, Micronauts and Rom were both part of the Marvel comic universe for years.
Yeah.
And G.I. Joe and Transformers at some level. And Visionary had some comic book stuff. So it's all things that had comic book base storylines to go with the toys. So it'd be interesting to see, and to create a thematic story through there. I don't know what you would call a big giant team up between all of them, because it's not like you'd be like Avengers. It's it'd be like all that other crap in your toy box. It's
it's a giant 80s clusterfuck of toy properties.
Yeah, like everything that Disney and Warner Brothers doesn't own.
Yeah. But yeah, I can definitely get behind that. I would love to see some of that stuff on the big screen. Heck, even the small screen, I wouldn't mind, like, new cartoons or TV shows of some sort. Netflix, the Netflix and Hulu thing and the Amazon Prime thing with getting shows like, Jessica Jones and all that. It's kind of turned into the next thing, where you can do a little bit more than, if you're going to put it on network TV.
Yeah, they give you a little bit more freedom because there's not, you're not fighting for airtime. The good thing about Netflix is they already have your money.
Yeah.
And if something's popular, they're like, oh, all right, and then it drums up interest and people subscribe to see it. I just put on my playlist for Netflix. Bill Burr has a new cartoon sitcom called F is for Family.
Okay.
And I saw him on Jimmy Fallon, and he was talking about it. And he's like, I've had a ton of failed pilots because I want to kind of tell the story of my life, growing up as a kid. But if you put out a pilot now and you're doing something mean to a kid, like the stuff that happened to me when I was a kid, people don't think it's funny. But if it's a cartoon, people don't give a shit about a cartoon kid.
True.
So I saw a couple segments from it. It's only 6 episodes, and I love Bill Burr. And he's one of those guys that grew up in that early 70s point, and there's a segment where he's in the car with his dad, and it's like, hand me one of those beers. Here, steal for a minute while I'm opening it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Things now that were like more relatively commonplace back then, that if you did now, people were like, oh my God, that's horrible. You know, it's child abuse and child endangerment. And, but it's like, all right, my dad had a beer while he was driving to the baseball game. Who cares? You know, it's
Yeah.
But it's Bill Burr's take on things is I've always enjoyed his stand up, so I'm psyched for this show. I was a little disappointed even when I found out it was 6 episodes, but I do like a 6-episode run on things, so I can kind of be like, all right, they're not trying to flesh this out with fluff. You're kind of getting the best of what they wrote, and then if they take another year to write another 6 episodes, you know, it's kind of that British TV series mentality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where they're not trying to stretch it out to 20 episodes.
Yeah. I'll have to check it out.
And I guess this kind of ties in a little bit in talking about traumatized childhoods. The Macaulay Culkin Home Alone, now, you know, how Kevin McAllister is right now.
Yeah. I watched that on YouTube. I want to say Saturday, and it was weird, but like good weird. It wasn't like, you know, it wasn't bad weird. It was good weird.
Yeah, it was good way, you know, and the way he did it and the way he kind of interpreted where that character would be. And I like when Macaulay Culkin kind of comes back out of the woodwork and does something like that, because you always hear these rumors will pop up every once in a while that Macaulay Culkin, he's such a bad drug addict that he, you know, that he or Macaulay Culkin. The one I remember last year or something when they're like, Macaulay Culkin's dead, and then he was performing at a show with his band, and they brought him up on stage, Weekend at Bernie's style, with like propped up and with like sunglasses, that he was just a corpse up on stage. And he's kind of playing into it. And I think Macaulay Culkin is one of those guys that he made a shitload of money as a kid. He never had to work another day in his life by the time he was 13.
Yeah.
And he kind of does what he wants to do. And he knows people and they work on a project together. You know, he's got people that he's friends with. You know, the last feature I really remember seeing him in was Party Monster. And that's already getting to be 10, 15 years ago now.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one.
It was based on the Limelight in Manhattan and the murders that happened with the drugs and the craziness. I forget the name of the guy. It's based on a true story. He was playing a real life guy. But I kind of and I remember when all that stuff was happening, when the Limelight was a thing over here, because I had friends that were involved in that, you know, going over there, and they really dug it.
Yeah, I think the last movie that I saw him in was The Good Son.
Well, that was 20-something years ago.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
But hey, who's counting? But I like that he does, you know, I'm like, good for him. He does the projects he wants to do. And if he just wants to be a weirdo that hangs out in New York and plays in a band, you know, he doesn't have to he's not broke. He's got money, and he's not blowing his money. He just kind of sits around and does his thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Good for him.
You know, maybe he's going to one day just show up and be like, I want to, you know, be in something. You know, I'm sure it'll be something overly artsy, because he's very, I want to say New York bohemian, if that's, it's because it's not even like hipster. It's like, it's, you know, it's that lifestyle of I'm a multimillionaire, but I look like a homeless person. That's just,
and he really does. He really does look like a homeless.
Yeah, and that's very New York. You know, there's a lot of people that you could just kind of bump into in the city and be like, oh, this guy must be a garbage man. And be like, no, he, you know, he was an investment banker until he struck it super rich when he was 29. And now he just wanders around in sweatpants and an old T-shirt because he didn't give a shit.
Because why not? Yeah.
And, you know, I guess if you reach that point in your life where you don't give a shit and you're happy with what you got, you know, and you don't have that itching desire for art or creativity or performance, then why bother? You know, just do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see this little thing where he kind of, he delved into how how somebody who's in their 30s now would be after their mother left them alone for a week when they were 10.
For a week. Yeah. And it was funny. It really was funny. He says my mother was out. She left me home like for a week. I was like, she's out being like a groupie for a polka band or something like that.
Yeah, because a 10-year-old just wouldn't get it. Like, how could you do this? And I'm not ever going to be okay with this, Mom.
Yeah. That was definitely a lot of fun. I forget what it's called.
I don't even know what it's called. I saw so much of it advertised on Facebook. I saw it advertised 1,000 different ways on Facebook. Different people were posting it on different pages and sites and things that I heard of it that way and then checked it out on YouTube. But it's Macaulay Culkin now or Macaulay Culkin or Kevin McAllister now, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I just had it. Crap, there it goes. And I don't see a title. Macaulay Culkin revisits Home Alone. Kevin McAllister as an adult. And boy, is he not doing too hot. Oh, and it says episode 1, too. But it's Just Me in the House by Myself is the title that I found for it.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So that works.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to touch on before we get into our Star Wars talk is the Wu-Tang Clan album. The Secrets of Shaolin, or
the one that Pharma Bro bought and then probably got arrested for like securities fraud or something in the past couple days.
Yes. Once Upon a Time in Shaolin.
Okay.
Now they only made one copy of it, and that prick who just got arrested, which that's a whole different thing. That there's been a bunch of great memes about him. That's like, oh, he raised sick people's medicine up by 5,000%, but and nobody batted an eye. But you start stealing rich people's money, and they throw you in jail.
Yeah.
So he bought this album from them, and there's certain caveats to the deal. One of the quotes here, and I'm not sure how official this is, but this is what's been going around the internet. The buying party also agrees that any time during the stipulated 88-year period, now I guess the guy only owns it for 88 years, and then it goes into public domain or whatever.
Fantastic.
The seller may legally plan and attempt to execute one heist or caper to steal back Once Upon a Time in Shaolin, which, if successful, would return all ownership rights to the seller.
Okay.
Said heist or caper can only be undertaken by current active members of the Wu-Tang Clan and or actor Bill Murray with no legal repercussions.
That's fantastic.
Yes, that was... And I know Bill Murray and the Wu-Tang Clan, they shot a scene together in 200 Cigarettes or 100 Cigarettes or whatever. Is that odd artsy movie about cigarettes and coffee, maybe it was called.
Okay.
Just about people smoking and drinking coffee.
Okay.
But that's it just added to the complete weirdness of it they'd be like, all right, this asshole bought the thing. It's Wu-Tang Clan sold it. And then they incorporated this weird caveat into it. And they made Bill Murray part of it too.
Why not?
I mean, it's a movie right there. You just pitched a movie to somebody.
Yeah, trying to steal back this, mythical Wu-Tang Clan album.
I mean, I already see it. You just put in the Wu-Tang Clan, you put in Bill Murray, and you have like Jesse Eisenberg play the pharmacy bro guy, and there's your movie.
Yeah. Because I can't really hate Jesse Eisenberg any more than I already do.
Yeah. And it really sounds like something that a film that Seth Rogen wrote one day when he was really high.
Yeah.
But apparently it's something that really happened.
That's a shame. That's a shame that is a real thing.
Yeah. It's a lot of weirdness there. Oh, did you watch the Miss Universe contest?
I did not. I was too busy at the movie theater.
Oh, yes. I caught 2 minutes of the Miss Universe. I was picking up a pizza, and it happened to be on a pizza place Sunday night. And it was the bikini section, or whatever they bother to call it. I guess they call it swimsuits.
The swimsuit section.
But it wasn't swimsuits, it was bikinis. These broads weren't swimming in these outfits.
Yeah.
But I swear to God, I only saw 2 women, and it was Miss Colombia and Miss Philippines.
Okay. Now, I'm not quite sure what really happened there. Did Steve Harvey or whatever his name announce the wrong winner? Is that what happened?
Announced and crowned the wrong winner. Like, not only did they tell this Miss Colombia, who looks just like a younger version of Sofia Lagaria from Modern Family.
Okay.
They put the crown on her, they put the sash on her, the whole thing. And then they're like, oh, it was really Miss Philippines. And somebody else, and like Steve Harvey just like walked off stage, and some other person came over and like took the crown off this poor girl and put it on the other one.
Wow.
I mean, it's not, I don't know what the Miss Universe title, it's not like she's going to rule the universe or anything now.
That would be awesome if that was the case. But,
And how is it really Miss Universe? Because, did they get anybody else in the universe?
Yeah, there's no aliens or anything like that,
It's kind of how the World Series is just played between 2 countries.
Yeah.
But there are players from all over the world. So I guess it's a little bit more legitimate than
a little bit more
the universe. But yeah. I guess they haven't restricted entrance from somebody from another planet in the universe from being in Miss Universe. They just haven't shown up to compete.
Okay.
Where I would be a little worried if an alien race, their only reason they reach out to us was just be like, we want to enter the Miss Universe. Like, we found out there's another planet, and it's really just like Alabama. It's crap.
All of a sudden, I'm thinking of that South Park episode where the prehistoric creature, they found a prehistoric creature.
Yeah. But I think probably this could have been the best thing to happen to these 2 girls, or at least the Miss Columbia broad. She's going to her face is going to be all over the place now. Probably more even than the girl that won Miss Universe.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And what are they? They're really just models, right? They're not, they're models, maybe actresses. It could be the best thing that happened for her. In the long run.
I don't really know anything about it. I know it's a beauty contest.
Yeah, it's a beauty contest, and she lost. But You know, she's not. It's not like they threw acid
She
in her
won,
face when
but
they were
she
done.
lost.
Yeah, she
Yeah.
won, she lost, and she's going to make a shitload of money off of this. And I'm not even saying
absolutely.
like, oh, she's going to sue Steve Harvey because it's she's going to be in all kinds of commercials. I'm sure people.
Yeah, and there's probably going to be a Lifetime made-for-TV movie about it. You know.
Oh yeah, and there's ad execs tripping over themselves now to get her in a Super Bowl commercial.
Yeah.
You know, she's going to be, not crowned Miss Doritos or something like that.
Probably.
You know, she'll be all over the place.
GoDaddy girl or something like that.
Yes. This is going to. What's the Sandra Bullock movie, Miss Congeniality? They'll make a third one off of this from that. This girl's going to do okay.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
My heart's not too broken for her. It's a little upsetting, but that's what you get when you put Steve Harvey in charge of something.
Yeah. Which is why I try not to put Steve Harvey in charge of things.
Yeah, Steve Harvey is completely banned from being in charge of anything in my life.
Yeah. Agreed.
He could be the president of big bushy mustaches if that was ever a thing, but
Yeah.
I would still go Raleigh fingers over him. It was just
yeah, me too. Or like 1980s Tom Selleck.
Yeah. Tom Selleck's got the mustache a little bit more, under control now. And if or Eddie Murphy, like 1990s Eddie Murphy had that nice thick mustache. How are we talking about mustaches? Let's talk about Star Wars.
We should talk about Star Wars.
Here's your warning. So from here on out, we're going to talk about Star Wars unabated. Here's your spoiler warning. If you don't want to hear anything else about Star Wars, shut us off right now. Go see the movie. Turn us back on.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you don't turn us back on, come back next week, where we'll probably still be talking about Star Wars for the third week in a row.
Next week we will we promise a Star Wars free show.
I can't promise that.
We're going to show Star Wars for free. We're going to get a bootleg copy and we're going to put it up and it's going to be on, and that's going to be for free of no charge. And Star Wars free show.
But then that wouldn't be good because then it's not it's not going to be making any money, and then it won't beat Avatar. Which is where I'm at right now, where I want I need this movie to beat Avatar. I don't know if it's going to, but I want it to.
I concur.
I'm going to do my part already. I'm going to probably see it at least one more time this week. And then probably every weekend after that until it's out of the theater. Which hopefully won't be for a while. So let's talk some Star Wars The Force Awakens. I was a little leaving the theater on Friday after seeing it. I was a little off, I would say. I didn't know how I felt about it.
Yeah, well, it went through a couple different emotions because I was so happy just to be there. We talked about it last week.
Absolutely.
And about waiting 32 years for this movie. And when the title crawl started and I'm sitting there reading it, it was like I was smiling, but I had a tear in my eye type of thing. Because it was that type of happy. It was like this is fantastic, and this is what I've waited for. At least what I was hoping for. And then again, it's like, you go back 15 years to episode 1 and you're like, I've been waiting for Star Wars, and then you're like, right.
And that's kind of how I felt leaving the theater on Friday. Like there was, and like I said this to you, I said I had like a really bad day on Friday. For somebody that was waiting for Star Wars, it was like a day that person who's been waiting for this Star Wars movie should not have had. It was just a bad day.
And that was, part of the reason I'm like, I ain't working today. I'm not doing anything else but concentrating on seeing this movie. And because I didn't want to let that happen. I didn't want to let any outside thing be like, all right, now I'm worried about this because and I'm not concentrating on Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be, I'm like, I'm just going into this where I'm going to be able to see this movie and enjoy it. And it started well. I think they, it didn't fling too much. It pretty much started with introducing a bunch of new characters to us.
Yeah.
For a while. It took, it wasn't like, all right, here, we're going to wheel out all the old people for you right away. And they introduced characters that were interesting.
Yeah, I liked the characters. I liked Rey. I was a big fan of Poe. Finn, I could have taken her. I could take her leave. I wasn't crazy about him Friday, and I was probably even less crazy about him after my second viewing. Just for this, and this kind of hit me. There's one scene, and it's later on in the movie, and it was almost like they gave him, because he's a British actor. It's like they almost gave him like all the Kevin Hart movies and said, "Here, this is who we want you to be." At points, and it was just like, I'm like, oh my God, he's channeling Kevin Hart. This needs to stop now. Not that I dislike Kevin Hart, because I do, but it just kind of felt like it was a little. For me, some of the humor felt a little forced, I think.
Yeah, with him,
I think walking away, I think that was my biggest critique of the movie.
He was. I think part of the reason why I didn't like his character as much, and I agree with you about the humor stuff and kind of feeling a little forced with him, but the other one was his character, and purposely for the script was his character was awkward.
Yeah.
And it just, he didn't fit in, but he was kind of designed to not fit in.
Yeah.
And it's definitely, it's fish out of water, but it's not too much fish out of water. And it's there's a good dichotomy there with him and the Kylo Ren character.
Yeah.
Where you have one who was kind of raised to be something, he was raised to be a stormtrooper and he turned against that. And then you have Kylo Ren, who, when we talked about it, and I believe I successfully predicted that Kylo Ren was a failed apprentice of Luke Skywalker. And when we talked about that.
Yeah. And I think, that was, I think that we kind of all felt that was going to be the storyline with him. And for me, I think one of the disappointments with that was the reveal of who he was. I kind of felt happened too early in the movie. Like what his lineage was.
It happened early, but I guess at that point, it would have seemed forced if they didn't reveal it. If they didn't tell you that. It made sense from a story point of view, or from that, like, all right, that's a big bomb to drop on me this early in the story. But it was integral to the story. When you find out,
absolutely.
And that's the big reveal that he's Han Solo and Princess Leia's son.
Yeah.
Which, it was when that was revealed, I went back to the old, to the books that they've eliminated from canon. But that was one of the storylines that they did, that one of Han Solo and Princess Leia's children turned to the dark side.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there were a few things that it seemed like they borrowed or they mirrored some of the characters from those novels.
Oh, absolutely. I think as far as being in, as far as the movie goes and being introduced to old friends, I think my favorite introduction to an old friend was reintroducing the Falcon, which I thought was done well.
Yeah.
Finn and Rey are trying to escape the First Order, and they're running towards a ship, and the ship gets blown up. Or as they're running towards the ship, Finn turns to her and says, "What about that one?" She says, that ship's garbage," and you don't see the ship. And they're running towards another ship. It blows up, and she's like, "Garbage will work," and they turn and run towards it, and it's the Falcon sitting in a junkyard.
But it was one of those things when they said that ship's garbage, you're like, it's the Millennium Falcon.
You knew it was going to be the Falcon, but it was still.
It was fun.
It was done. It was fun. It was absolutely fun.
And then to see, and then it was like the Millennium Falcon kind of got its own introduction first. And it was like, all right, we're flying the Millennium Falcon. The Millennium Falcon's fighting TIE fighters. And we're having that scene where he's in the chair, he's in the swivel chair, shooting at the TIE fighters. And you're like, all right, I'm here. This is
it's a Star Wars movie. It's absolutely a Star Wars movie.
Star Wars movie. There's this is what I know. This is what I wanted.
Yeah.
And then when Han and Chewie showed up, it gets a reaction from the crowd because you're like, there's Han Solo and Chewbacca. And then that perfect "we're home" line, it gets you. Even though you knew it was coming because it was in all the trailers, you're like, all right, and then you buy into it, and then you got some of that Weasley Han Solo.
And that line in that scene fit, and it goes back to what you just said, where you're in this scene, and the Falcon's fighting off TIE fighters, and Finn's in the turret and fighting them off. And once that's all done, and it's kind of calmed down a little bit, and then Han and Chewie come in, get reunited with the ship, and Han says, "Chewie, we're home." That's when we were all home. It was like that moment. It was like not only were they home, we were home too.
Yeah, you had Han Solo and Chewbacca back in the Millennium Falcon in a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And then it got into a bit of business with the Han Solo and the smuggling and the trying to rip guys off, and that seediness of those old Star Wars movies that was not in the prequels. That dirtiness, that Han Solo scoundrel type of things came back into it, and they even for the guys to be like, you're too old to be. Everybody knows your tricks. Type of shit that they were pulling on them, and that scene worked too. And you had big CGI monsters, but in a real environment, and it worked again.
Oh, absolutely.
And it was a fun scene, and it was a little, if you want to say it was pointless, it kind of was, but it just kind of moved. It was you needed a piece of action right there, and you got it, and you got to see the heroes doing stuff again. A lot happens in it. I don't want to go scene for scene through it, but what was your impressions of the Supreme Leader guy?
I'm intrigued. But I don't know how I feel. Like, I don't know. I have some thoughts on him, but I don't know. I don't know where they're going to go with it.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I didn't do any reading into who any of the characters were going to be or any of that article stuff. I wanted the movie to reveal everything to me. Yeah. And I got into a conversation with a friend of mine about it. And he asked what I thought about that character and if I thought that was I on my phone here.
Darth Plagueis?
Darth Plagueis, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, he brought up Darth Plagueis. And I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. And there was an article, I guess, somewhere where Andy Serkis said that the Snoke character is 1,000 years old or thousands of years old.
Yeah.
And, and then he's been around. And I'm like, all right. I was like, okay. I kind of was hoping for something else. And without knowing that, the theory that I came up with, and this was after I kind of, after watching the movie and they had introduced the concept of Anakin and Luke's lightsaber, and that being handed down again. And I started thinking about it and I'm like, wait a minute. Anakin, the lightsaber that went from Anakin through Ben Kenobi to Luke Skywalker. I was like, when was the last time we saw that? And it was Empire Strikes Back.
Empire Strikes Back, yeah.
And I'm like, all right, if the lightsaber was recovered, I'm like, what if the Empire recovered Luke's hand? And what if Snoke is a damaged clone of Luke Skywalker from a semi-rotted hand?
I could be down with that.
And again, I'm going into some of the things from the novels where they had evil cloned Jedi in some of the books, or at least one of the books.
And well, Dark Empire, the comic, was where
the Emperor came back cloned. Yeah, they cloned the Emperor.
Came back cloned.
And there was the cloned Jedi in the Thrawn trilogy.
Yeah, so it's not out of the question. And I kind of like that theory, and I do like the theory of him being revealed to be Darth Plagueis, actually. Where Palpatine was his apprentice and tried to kill him, but thought he killed him, but he didn't. Now he's stepping in to fill that void. I kind of dig that idea. I'm interested to see where the character goes.
Yeah.
I'm really interested for Kylo Ren's arc. And I think out of all the characters, I liked him the most.
Yeah, the performance was really solid, and it brought, there was a ton of emotion around the character, and for him to be struggling with fighting to accept the dark side.
Where he's not, usually it's kind of the reverse of what we've seen in the past 6 movies, where it's been, it's the character fighting against the darkness, where he's fighting against the light. Where he even says, he's at one point he's talking, the scene you see where he's talking to Vader's charred helmet. He's like, I can feel the light pulling at me. So I'm interested to see where his arc goes. But I liked the character, and I've seen, since I've seen the movie, I kind of would pop on posts and message boards a little bit just to kind of see what other people were saying. And there were a lot of people that were like, oh, he's just weak and he's a whiny little brat. And yeah, that's the idea behind him.
Yeah.
He's not Vader. And he knows he's not Vader.
The weakness is one of those things that caused people to turn to the dark side.
Yeah.
In that story, or at least that's what they, it's being afraid and being weak and being, and being angry and all those different, all those negative traits, or, Yoda laid it all out for us.
Yeah.
But I think the actor's performance was great. I mean, the stuff in the helmet, the stuff out of the helmet, I think he did a good job of conveying a lot of emotion in the character and making the character very human, because he still is a human.
Yeah, where when the up until the end of Jedi, we didn't know what Vader was. As Kenobi said, Vader was more machine than man.
Yeah, and he's but he's a monstrous human, is what we're
Yeah,
what we've seen, and his lashing out in anger. I mean, it was a funny bit where the stormtroopers were kind of walking down the hall and heard him wrecking up the room, and they turned around and walked the other way.
Yeah, and there were a couple scenes like that where he kind of threw a temper tantrum because he didn't get what he wanted, or and I liked that. I felt it kind of gave the character a little more depth as opposed to just being like, okay, here's Han and Leia's kid that turned to the dark side. Luke was training him and he turned to the dark side. I dug the character a lot. One of the things, and I'd been a fan of this since we first saw it, when it was not so much the fact that the saber was made with an unstable crystal. So it's, the saber, the other lightsabers are kind of a solid beam. This one is kind of crackling and sparking and stuff, which I thought was a nice touch. It kind of adds to the he's not fully trained yet.
There's definitely a lot there. I guess now we got to talk about the thing that happened.
That happened, the punch to the gut that I think we all knew was coming.
Well, it wasn't even a punch to, it kind of laid out and you saw it coming and you weren't overly surprised, but the way that they did it and just it was that, to have a character that you've loved your whole life. One of the greatest characters in some people's opinion in film.
Yeah, he is in all of film, and he is my favorite character. I voice a character on a radio show, and I kind of pattern that character after him a little bit.
Yeah, and it's a character that they made a slight alteration in one of the films, and people have been talking about it for 20 years.
Because it changed the character.
Yeah. And they've lessened that change so much because everybody freaked the fuck out about it. So you had a scene where Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, the son of Han Solo and Princess Leia, is confronted by Han Solo. He tries to bring him back to the light. And
the emotion on Adam Driver's face during that scene made that scene even more powerful.
Yeah.
And it was, where he's like, and he's Han is trying to bring him back to the light and come home, come home. We want you to come home. He says, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to. And Han says, I will help you. And that just, at that point, I'm like, shit.
Yeah. Well, I kind of knew,
but not even before that, I'm sitting there and I'm doing I'm watching the movie and I'm doing my best, Danny Glover from the first Lethal Weapon. And I'm going, no, don't go out on a ledge.
I was, to me, my inner monologue was like, no, just leave.
Yeah.
Get out now. Just turn around and leave.
You got 2 more money to get him right now.
Get Luke to help you. Turn around and leave. Get the hell out of there. Just don't. Oh, he's walking out on a bridge. Don't walk out on a bridge. There's no railing on the bridge.
I know. There's no fucking railing. God damn it, there was no railing.
And then it was just, and then when it was all said and done, we walked out and we got in the car, and my wife just looks at me and goes, "He can't be dead. Something happened. Chewbacca saved him and just didn't tell anybody. It's a secret, and he's hiding him, and he's going to come back." And I'm like, Chewbacca had to go and save everybody else. It was Chewbacca, but somebody had to save him somehow. And then my mind started like going, she's right. Somebody had to save him. He can't be dead. And I'm like, who could save him? Who was right? I'm like, but he got stabbed through the chest and the planet he was on exploded. So it's not a good sign. I'm like, who could? And I'm like,
No,
there's only one person in the Star Wars universe that could have saved him. Boba Fett saved Han Solo. That's the fan fiction that people have been typing out.
oh, absolutely! Wouldn't that be fucking awesome?
If they end the second movie with Boba Fett showing up with an injured Han Solo frozen in carbonite to preserve him from dying until somebody can fix him. And then Boba Fett sides with the good guys to fight. So my fan fiction brain went into overhaul there. But the lightsaber fight was great and wasn't over the top. You didn't have the CGI flipping around and any of that stuff. You had a lot of realism brought to it. But still, it was original. You know, it was different from the original Star Wars lightsaber fights, but not so outlandish that you're like the stuff in the prequels, where you're like, all right, this is too much.
Yeah. But I mean, I like that. I mean, there really wasn't, and as I said, I walked out of that movie theater, on Friday, not knowing what to think, not knowing if I loved it, not knowing if I liked it, kind of scared that I hated it. You know, but then
the emotion walking out of it is so weird because I was at the same time unbelievably happy that I had a Star Wars movie that I enjoyed, but saddened because of the death of Han Solo.
And you know, I like the credits started to roll, and like I knew there was no post-credits scene,
right?
And everybody around me was getting up and leaving on Friday night, and I just sat there. And Mary turned to me and she's like, "So what's the after the credits scene?" And I'm like, "There is no after credits scene." And she's like, "Well, why are we sitting here?" I'm like, "Because I need a minute."
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I had to compose myself for a minute. And then I had to go and have a few beers.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I wanted to call you, but like I wasn't sure. Like I wasn't sure if you had seen it yet. I wasn't sure if you were at a viewing. So I was like, I'm going to call Mike on Saturday, and then I just got involved because I needed to work things out.
Yep.
So I messaged the kind of the second best thing, which is our co-host on the Hot Tag podcast, Tom, who is, you know, a big Star Wars fan as well. And I just said to him, I don't know if I liked it. And he kind of came back to me. He was like asking me like the questions as to why. And I really couldn't tell him why. Because there was just so much emotion, and I'm like, I think I just had a crappy day at work, and I watched my favorite character in all of cinema get stabbed through the heart by his son, and then fall into the thing, and then the planet exploded. So I'm like, I'm gonna give myself a day. Like I thought maybe I'd go Saturday. I gave myself Saturday to just kind of decompress a little bit. And then I went and saw it again yesterday, and I fucking loved it. You know, I came home and it was like all was right with the world. It's like, you know, This was the Star Wars movie I'd kind of been waiting for 32 years. I'm interested. I really am interested to see where it goes.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's characters that you're introduced that you still have a lot of questions about. Like, who the fuck was Max von Sydow? You know, it was cool. Yeah. So you kind of forget, you know, when I saw it the second time, I'm like, oh yeah, Max von Sydow was in this for a couple of minutes. I'm like, beginning.
I saw him I saw him in the beginning, and I'm like, why the fuck do I know that guy? And it was because I just couldn't I couldn't.
Well, he's
place
one of those guys. He's in so much stuff, but looks different enough in a lot of it that you're like, oh yeah, he was in Exorcist and Conan and Minority Report and Flash Gordon and
yeah,
like,
and that's what it was. I'm like, why the fuck do I know this guy? But some of the other positives that came out of it, I thought BB-8 was fantastic. And I was kind of going in like, oh, are they going to make him the next Jar Jar Binks? And that little droid was fucking cool as hell, man. Like, I thought he was cool. I really liked like Poe Dameron's character. He kind of fits that. He kind of fits that pilot mold that we kind of just lost in a way that.
Yeah.
Rey's character was interested to see where I mean out her story as well. Solo, is she somebody else? Because it did seem that Han kind of knew her somehow.
Yeah, it was weird stuff, and I had that discussion with my brother, and I'm like, I don't think they're gonna go secret twin again.
I don't think they're going secret twin. I think she's gonna. And this is my opinion. I don't have any info on the movie that's coming out in 18 months. I do think that they're going to go with she's Skywalker's kid.
That's kind of what I was thinking too. That's the way it kind of lays out to me. How much money do you think Mark Hamill got paid to be in that movie for 42 seconds?
A lot. And that was kind of another thing that I didn't, even after the second viewing, I didn't care for. I didn't care for like the helicopter closing shot. I just thought that was kind of odd.
It was odd, but I liked it because it kind of showed that isolation that he had put himself in.
Yeah.
That it backed it up enough to show you that he's been out in the middle of Ireland, the planet of Ireland, hiding from.
And like, the other thought, and this is coming from another friend of ours. And this was one of his biggest gripes was the whole Luke running away from his problems thing. Where, Kylo Ren was his former student, his nephew that turned to the dark side. His nephew turns to the dark side, kills all his students, and then Luke disappears. And now, because of that and Luke disappearing, now his best friend was just murdered by his son.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how that comes into play, if at all. I think it should kind of come into play a little bit. Is Luke stable? That's another thing that's got to come into play a little bit. Where's his mindset at?
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. There's a ton of questions, and I'm now eagerly anticipating a movie that's a year and a half away.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I like, that's one thing I do like though. I like that we left the movie with questions. Everything wasn't kind of wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow. Now we have more questions like, what's Luke's mindset? How does he feel? Is he going to train Rey? Who is Rey?
Yeah.
For that matter, who's Finn? Are we going to find out more of his backstory?
When's Boba Fett going to show up?
When's Boba Fett?
Questions like this. Whatever happened to Jar Jar Binks? These are the questions people want to know.
To the opening, that what if if Jar Jar was secretly a Sith.
You broke up a little bit there, so all I heard was secretly a Sith at the end of it.
And
You there?
You still there? Yeah.
I couldn't hear you. You got all transformery, and I couldn't.
What was the last thing you heard? I'll fix it.
Secretly a Sith, and I didn't hear the question leading up to that, or
what was was Jar Jar secretly a Sith? Which was a theory that, like, as much as I know is bullshit, it was kind of a fun theory.
Yeah.
Because there's like all this little stuff that, looking back on the other movies, could kind of fit, and like what, that was up until, the reveal of Snoke. That was the thing, because nobody had seen Andy Serkis's character at all. So it was like, is he going to be Jar Jar Binks as a Sith? Which people would have fucking rioted, but it still might have been a little. It might have been a little fun. But yeah, all in all, I felt like it was a solid movie. It was a great start. I do feel some of it was rehashed from stuff we had seen already. There
were some circular storytelling that you had the big base, you had the death of the older, wiser character, you had companions meeting along the way in their adventure. But I think aside from those elements that were similar, you had a bunch of different characters introduced. You had a lot of different emotion put into it. And, it's kind of a continuation. And I was thinking about it. They're like, oh, they built another Death Star. And I'm a bit of a World War II buff. I love watching a World War II documentary. And if you watch that and through the series of wars, they just kind of kept expanding on an idea and trying to improve it, like the Nazis had the mega guns, and it was like, all right, we're going to put a giant gun on a train so we can move it around so they can't bomb it. And then they figured out, well, we can just blow up the tracks and then you can't move your train around anymore. Like, okay, we're going to put our mega gun on the side of a mountain and then you can't bomb it. And, and the Japanese with the bomber pilots and then the kamikazes.
Yeah.
And then it just got to the point where they were putting dudes in what was essentially just a missile and letting them pilot a missile to their death. It wasn't even like, all right, as a last-ditch effort, take yourself out in a plane. It was, there's no coming back from this. So going back to the same well is something that happens in warfare.
Yeah.
And if you're able to blow up a few planets with that first Death Star, and then the second Death Star, what people kind of don't realize is like, okay, that was getting built kind of simultaneously. And then you have this Star Killer base, which Kevin Smith came out and said that his question was answered or his point was proven wrong, that apparently the average stormtrooper does know how to install a toilet.
Yes. Because Finn worked in sanitation.
I was laughing when he said, I'm like, I guess the average stormtrooper does know how to install a toilet.
Yeah. And I do think that was a nod towards that, that scene in Clerks.
Yeah, there were a couple things like that. There were a couple things that they did in that, some of the humorous bits that were kind of like, it was fan service of, bring up that scene from Clerks. And when they get to the planet and like, it was kind of in that same part. Well, how did you expect it for this to work? well, we just use the Force. The Force doesn't work that way.
Yeah. And that was some of the good humor. One of my favorite things is kind of on the tail end of that scene is when Han turns to Chewie and goes, "Oh, you're cold."
Yes.
That was solid. There was something else I was thinking of that I kind of had an issue with, and I don't remember what the hell it was now. Oh, Phasma, which I thought was just like, I was excited for her character, and then she was just kind of a waste. I hope she comes back in another movie and is kind of a little more badass, but.
It was I guess we'll kind of wait and see. There are a couple characters you're like, is that a throwaway, or is that? And I have a feeling that they're not going to introduce too many kind of like cool characters like that and then just throw them away, because that was the biggest criticism of Darth Maul. It was like, we should have get the prequel trilogy would have been better if we had Darth Maul onto that third movie.
Oh, absolutely.
But
I liked General Hux. He was downright scary. He
definitely embodied that. It was perfect that they put a British guy in the British space Nazis of Star Wars were back in full effect.
Yeah.
And it was, that type of Tarkin part, that cold-hearted, militaristic, evil guy, and that worked. It definitely worked. And I was like,
that scene before they fire the cannon on Starkiller that first time sent chills down my spine.
Yeah, it was very much like a Nazi rally. It was like one of those one of those speeches that Hitler would be given.
Yeah. One of the things that I kind of liked was that they really, with this base, for all intents and purposes, they wiped out the Republic. Where you had kind of, you had the Republic in power, and then you had what they were calling as the rebels had become the resistance in this film, led by Leia and all that. And that the Republic was secretly funding, or not so secretly funding, the resistance. And then with basically one shot of this cannon on this Starkiller base, they wiped out the Republic. They took out the government. So now we're kind of back into that, Rebels Empire kind of thing that we saw, in the original trilogy.
But I guess they did leave open that the Republic fleet is still in existence.
I thought the fleet was wiped out. I thought I heard the fleet was wiped out. I could be wrong.
I didn't completely get that, and then I'm like, what planets are they destroying? And I guess that's the bulk of the Republic, but I guess there could be other systems with Republic.
Well, there are other systems with that are in the Republic, but the system that was destroyed was the system that was the basically the government. It wasn't Coruscant, but it was it was like that type of system. So that's where the Senate was.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely after a second viewing, there was more I liked about it than I didn't. That's for sure. I'm looking forward to going and enjoying it again.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe one of these weekends we'll catch up and go see it together.
Yes. But I walked out of it with happy. I guess is the
Yeah.
as I kept saying I'm like I'm happy and sad at the same time, and that's exactly what my brother texted me later when when me and him were talking about it. So now I'm intrigued and I'm interested and I'm back on board, and I'm really happy with what they did with this film.
Yeah. As I've said, I walked out Friday unsure. Yesterday, I walked out with a giant smile on my face. Like, okay, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really thought it was done well. And I'm excited for the future of the franchise. I'm excited for, we've got next December, we've got, Rogue Squadron coming out. And then, the May after that, we've got episode 8. So I'm definitely, it's a good time to be a Star Wars fan again. Not that it was never a good time to be a Star Wars fan, but
that dark period is past us.
There were some lean years in there.
Yeah, and I did like that when I heard that a guy was shouting spoilers in the lobby of a movie theater, he got the ever-loving dog shit kicked out of him.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, apparently some guy in a Chewbacca costume beat the fuck out of him.
Fantastic.
And a few other people. So I was really happy to hear that.
That's kind of there was a YouTube group, or not a YouTube group, but like a Facebook group that and I may have touched on it last week, that was threatening to spoil the movie because they want all the expanded universe stuff to be canon again.
Well, that ship has sailed. It's one of the
and it's just like, come on, people, just don't be a fucking dick. And I don't, maybe.
Well, that was one of the things. There were a few people I saw on Facebook that were like, I don't care, this is stupid. And I'm like, why are you mad because other people are happy? I'm like, people are excited and people are going to enjoy something. And just because it's something you don't enjoy, it's
there was a plethora of the, am I the only person that doesn't give a fuck about Star Wars shit on Facebook? And I'm like, and I'm kind of the same boat. Like, all right, I get it. You're not into Star Wars. It's not your thing, but and that's okay. But I enjoy it, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and I mean, I've seen the same thing for sports, where people are like, "Oh, I don't care about the Super Bowl," or who cares about the World Series? I'm waiting for football to start. And it's like, all right, you got something that you like, it's fine. Like, I don't sit there and be like, "Oh, the World Cup's on. I don't care about, fuck you and your World Cup." I had a friend who was adamant and like who is always like, he always hates on Star Wars. But he's a giant Pearl Jam fan and follows Pearl Jam around the world to go see Pearl Jam. And he's always posting pictures of these posters that he's bought from these Pearl Jam shows that are unique to that one particular show. And he has this whole collection. And it's like, oh, I guess it's okay for you to be obsessed about the thing that you like. But if other people like something, just because it's something you don't like, they're stupid.
Yeah. And that's,
or you have to be angry that other people are enjoying something.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the one thing that I just don't get. It's like, let me enjoy what I like. I'll let you enjoy what you like. Neither one of us is wrong.
Yeah. Like
unless it's like kiddie porn, that's, you're not wrong.
Yeah. Well, last week when we were talking about the Star Wars stuff, and I was talking about I always joke about Harry Potter being the best Star Wars ripoff ever made. And I don't hate those Harry Potter movies. I joke about that, but I like those movies. And I think they were done well. And I think they were structured well. So the movie franchise and the book franchise grew with the audience. As they got old, the themes of the stories got older along with them.
Yeah, and we've actually got kind of a new Harry Potter movie coming out soon too.
Yeah.
That Fantastic Beasts or whatever it is.
Well, you have Star Trek fans that are mad. There's that hate of, or this, that there has to be a divide between Star Wars fans and Star Trek fans. And I mean, it was funny when
Shatner was into that recently.
Yeah, but Shatner,
and I think some of that was tongue in cheek.
Well, Shatner's always been tongue in cheek because he was involved with the American Film Institute tribute to George Lucas. He hosted that, and he was in Fanboys when they were dealing with some of the Star Wars, Star Trek, division. Maybe it's something. I'm trying to think of something out there that I don't like, that I don't necessarily get like a venom in myself about things. Like, I love music, and in my own personal taste, I don't like Pink Floyd. And a lot of people love Pink, and people will say, and when I say that, people are like, really? And I'm like, I understand. I don't think
how I feel about Kiss.
Yeah,
I hate Kiss.
and that, I mean, that's a bigger one. I mean, for me to stand up and say, there's a lot of people that don't like Kiss. Is a kind of a love-hate thing that that's always been a thing with Kiss, that people are like, oh, Kiss is stupid. Oh, I love Kiss. There's very few people that are casual Kiss fans, and I kind of I put myself in that, because when I was a kid and Kiss was kind of a thing, I was intrigued just by the iconic,
absolutely
iconology, the whole visual element of Kiss,
the makeup and the visual stuff, and
and then you hear some of the music, and you're like, okay, this is good music, this is fun, this is whatever, to whatever standard. It's not my favorite, but I don't hate Kiss. There's maybe 6 Kiss songs on it.
All Night comes on the radio. I'm 9 out of 10 times I'm probably going to listen to it, but I can't stand Kiss.
And Kiss is one of those weird things too, where a lot of people don't necessarily just hate Kiss because of the music; they hate Kiss because of the people in Kiss.
Well, 2 of the people,
or the Kiss, Gene Simmons in Kiss, yes, the person in Kiss.
One of the main people in Kiss is a douche.
And when it comes with me, and I can understand why people would be critical of Kiss. With the Pink Floyd element, I don't sit here and say Pink Floyd sucks. I just look at it as like, I don't enjoy Pink Floyd. I understand why they're good. I understand why people enjoy them. But
that's the same way I feel.
It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, that's the same way I feel about Kiss. I'm not going to hate on you for being a Kiss fan. You want to go see Kiss 800 times and, paint your face up? Have at it, bro. I'm just not a fan.
Some of the visceral hatred that you see towards that, you see it with the film franchises, I guess it's become now, but it was always around there in music. There are people that hate Nickelback with a fever that burns like 1,000 suns.
I kind of hate Nickelback. I don't know if it's 1,000 suns, but I kind of hate Nickelback.
Okay. And I don't. And I'm like, as a guy who's a big music fan, and I'm like, do I have bad taste in music because I don't like Pink Floyd, and I do like.
I'm gonna back up a little bit. I don't completely hate Nickelback. Nickelback's done some good stuff, but
But I understand.
I'm not going to go out of my way to go see Nickelback.
I also understand the criticisms of Nickelback, and I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, all right, And then there's things that I've listened to in my life that if I hear now in small doses, I'm like, oh, I really like this. But and it was something I'm like, oh, it was
example. A prime example as far as music with me goes is I am a diehard Dave Matthews Band fan.
Right.
So I get the hatred from like everybody around me. Like, oh my God, how can you listen to that? It's such garbage. It's, whatever. You know what? You're not into Dave Matthews? Cool. I'm not going to hate on you because you're not into Dave Matthews. Let me enjoy, if I want to sit and listen to a 20-minute version of Two Step, I'm going to sit and listen to a 20-minute version of Two Step. I don't care if you like it or not. I got my headphones on. I'm good.
Yeah.
So I can relate to that. I absolutely can.
Yeah. I have been in that boat. I wouldn't want to listen to it all the time, but sometimes if it was one of those long Dave Matthews jams, I'm like, I really enjoy this. Same way with bands like Phish and the Grateful Dead. If you're in the right mood, sometimes it has to be herbally induced.
My brother-in-law is a huge Dead fan. And I don't hate the Dead. I'm not a diehard fan like he is, but I don't hate the Dead.
I'm funny because I like the Grateful Dead music, but tend to dislike Grateful Dead fans.
Yeah.
At least I've been to 2 Grateful Dead concerts, and both times it poured rain, and we decided not to go into the concert because we had like lawn seats at the Garden State Art Center or the PNC Bank Art Center, or whatever it's called now.
I've been to concerts in the PNC Bank Art Center in the rain.
Yes. And I'm too old for that shit now.
Yeah.
But being in the parking lot with a bunch of Grateful Dead fans, it's like, oh my God, you people are annoying assholes. I'm like, you're the worst part of Grateful Dead fans. Or of Grateful Dead is the fans. But the hate or the distaste, and this is something I want to talk about next week when we do the show. We'll tease next week's show. I want to talk a little bit about Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the bands that are going in and the bands that have been frozen out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for whatever reasons they have been.
Going in.
All I heard was going in.
Finally, Deep Purple is going in.
Yes, that's what I want. I want to save. I want to get into this until next week because I'd like to kind of do this long form.
Sure.
But that was one of those when I've seen things with that now, and people are like, they're upset that Deep Purple's going in, and I'm like, what's wrong with Deep Purple?
Deep Purple is like the first riff, like anybody that learns guitar learns to play Smoke on the Water.
Yeah.
They deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. There's no question.
Yeah, but and we really went but it's in that opinion of why are you going to hate something that other people like? If there's one thing if you don't like something, but then just to be mad if you're not even the people that have been like, I never even saw a Star Wars movie. It's like, all right, fine, I feel sorry for you. They were pretty good flicks. Because I was to me, some of them are like, oh, I never saw a Star Wars movie. I'm like, oh, that's too bad because some of them are some of the finest films ever made. To me, it's like I'm like, it's not something to be proud of. To me, it's like I never read some of the great literature of the world. Like I never read. I think we were talking about this last week or 2 weeks ago. I never read Moby Dick. For somebody to stand up and be like proud of, I never. And
for the fact that I a lot of the time I think people that say I've never seen Star Wars, I think 98% of the time they're full of shit.
It is kind of the new hipster. I'm a stammering idiot tonight. Sorry about that, people, but it's like one of those hipster things to do. Like, oh yeah, it's Star Wars, and it became like, I'm not happy with this, or I'm going to pretend like I don't like this because it's going to make me sound cool.
Yeah, and I a lot of the time when somebody tells me says to me I've never seen Star Wars, I absolutely call shenanigans.
Well, it's either either I don't believe them, or I just kind of feel part of me feels sorry for them. I can't sit there and like convince them. And it's the same thing that I kind of get if somebody tells me, oh, we don't have a TV. I'm like, can you not afford a TV?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, there's a lot of crap on TV. And I'm like, well, what do you do? Like, well, I read and listen to music. I'm like, well, there's a lot of bad music and a lot of bad books.
Yeah.
I'm like, if there's a bad show, don't watch it. I've never watched an episode of Two Broke Girls because it looks awful. It looks like I would hate it. I'm like, it's two pretty girls on TV, but that's not going to lure me in.
Kat Dennings has got a nice set on her, so
yeah, Kat.
But I
ain't arguing that. That's
I know. I'm just saying. I've never watched the show, but I'm not going to sit here and be like about Big Bang Theory. I'm not
going to sit here and be like, for people who like that, I'm going to be like, okay, you like it. I'm like, I've never got into it. Oh yeah, people hate Big Bang Theory. I think Big Bang Theory is funny. I think it's insulting to a comic book culture.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of the show. I've watched episodes here and there. I'm not a huge fan. I don't go out of my way to watch it, but I don't condemn you for enjoying the show.
But I've also met some people through Cooper Union in Manhattan that are some of the finest engineers in the world, and they're very similar in their personalities to those characters. That ain't the part that they're making up. I mean, not all people that like comic books and Star Wars and Star Trek are complete and total Poindexter, genius freaks. But there are, that I think that's the problem.
It's there.
Yeah, that's one of those shows that divides a lot of people in that same way. And there's people that hate it, and there's people that like it, and there's people that have never seen it who will badmouth it.
Yeah. But
I try not to badmouth anything I've never seen, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But I think we'll wrap up on that point. Talk about a little bit more about Rock and Roll Hall of Fame next week. We've got a little more, a little bit less Star Warsy kind of stuff to talk about.
I know we had a lot of. This was very cathartic for us to kind of get this emotion out and blabber about this movie a little bit. I think we both needed to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. We were actually supposed to have a friend on with us, but unfortunately he couldn't make it.
We have no friends because we're big Star Wars dorks.
Because we're big Star Wars fans. At least that's what Fox News wants you to believe.
Yes.
But he will be on with us in a couple weeks. He actually did the artwork for the show, which was fantastic. So Jay, thank you very, very much. Can't wait to have you on. He's from On the Square Comics, so check them out. There's a link on our webpage, which is the Channel Z Podcast at WordPress.com. You can find us on the Facebook.com/Channel Z Podcasts. You want to email us and tell us what you don't like and why we're wrong, or what you like and why we're wrong for not liking it. You can hit us up at channelzpodcasts@gmail.com. So this has been the Planet X podcast, the Star Wars spoilery edition. I'm Chris.
I'm Mike.
And we'll see you next week.
521 days until a new Star Wars movie.